Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Operation Nailspike, written by Dark Prince 010. Ladies and gentlemen, this hearing is hereby called to order to examine the conduct. It's all right, said the man seated at the other end of the table. You can just call this a court-martial, as I think that we're all aware that effectively is what it is. She continued forcefully, the conduct of the subpol agent who, due to the sensitive nature of his work, shall be identified as John Doe for these proceedings. Understood? He grimaced. John's not in my top 10 names for sure, but I suppose it'll have to do. We have become aware that you have flaunted numerous supervisory and regulatory guidelines and mandates, potentially exposing a number of sensitive research projects to risk during a time of conflict with the Sacharians. The man seated shrugged. I suppose that's all technically true, although I think I did what I did for good reason. Well, Mr. Doe, you will have time to explain those reasons as we proceed through this hearing. The general pulled a folder full of notes in front of her, tapping it slightly to organize the papers before laying it down and saying curtly, If you'd be so kind as to start at the beginning of this whole affair. I understand you requisitioned something or someone from the research morgue at Beta Centauri Hospital. The man across from the seated officer smiled and chuckled as he said, Yes, unconventional, but we needed to procure a body to plant to ensure that the Sacharians took the bait. Commander, the Sacharian Prime Guard leaned back on his seating pad, slitted eyes blinking in annoyance. With a clawed hand, he waved dismissively. Very well, proceed. What's so important that you need to disturb me? My Prime, our scouts along the tertiary border region with the human colonies have come across a human spacer found in the wreckage of a ship that we believe suffered a catastrophic failure during a transwarp jump. The nictating membranes again blinked as the Prime hissed angrily. A dead human! You interrupted my attempts to balance and strengthen our battle lines for the coming assault, and you disturb me just to tell me of a mere dead human? Not just any human, my Prime, but some manner of researcher. They were found in the documents and schematics regarding the human's progress and successful achievement of quantum teleportation. Are you mad? The general at the other end of the table slammed his fists down with the outburst, waving an accusing finger at John, who sat smugly and patiently at the other end. The fact that you even know that this project exists concerns me, and the fact less than 100 people outside of this room know of its existence is a testament to the level of secrecy that we've needed to maintain. And you're telling me you gave them our research? The younger man held up his hands defensively. In fairness, they are indeed working on a similar technology. The Sacharians are also aware of the incredible strategic advantage either side could achieve if forces and weaponry could be redeployed across the galaxy in a matter of seconds, rather than days and weeks. He lowered his hand, tapping the side of his nose with a wink, and he said, Well, that's also assuming that I did give them the results of our work on teleportation. The general sat back. Son, the Sacharians are no fools. If you tried to just give them something that makes a ship into a paperweight, they'd be able to smell it a mile off. Oh, I know, sir. That's why the research we gave them isn't entirely incorrect. Prime Guard, this is outstanding. A succulent victory, for the calculations within are indeed exactly what we've needed. The Prime Guard, for his part, still had his claws grasped around his back as he stiffly paced back and forth within the researcher's office. Are you sure, then, that this is legitimate? The humans are known to use falsehoods and trickery, dishonorable tactics in conflict. Oh yes, my Prime, I can guarantee you these are legitimate. With these, our research has advanced months, perhaps even years. The general sputtered again. A year's worth of advancement. That would allow them to leapfrog far enough that they'd nearly be on the same level of progress as we are now. John gave a slight shrug. I figured as much. We've already been in this conflict with the Sacharians for going on 8 years now, and it shows little sign of being solved, at least within the next half-decade. They'd make that progress with or without this little help, and it would be a lot easier for us to feed them a pile of bullshit with a little sugar sprinkled on top. The general wrinkled her nose at the expression, but continued her protest. With this, the Sagittarians could possibly achieve successful quantum teleportation for the first time, a milestone that we know they haven't reached yet, and one that we would bitterly regret them accomplishing. Is that so? Said John, smiling. And has humanity achieved that milestone yet? The general just glared, letting out a terse no comment as the spy continued. I'm also sorry for pulling Dr. DeNovo away to help a little with this. I'm aware of how valuable that time is for our own quantum teleportation research. But as I told them, research and invention is a process of finding every way that doesn't work, and I just needed the most catastrophic way of not working they had. What was the result? What exactly did you give the Sagittarians in the end? Well, the final part of giving this an air of legitimacy was adding the presence of a substantial chunk of exotic matter to the reactor core mix for the quantum engine. There was a burst of worried discussion amongst the officer. The first general spoke again, her voice laced with concern. We are aware that the Sagittarians have developed the capability to manufacture exotic matter as well, but they are still researching its uses just as much as we are. This is already in a number of other weapons development programs, although it's not been used in teleportation research to my knowledge. Did you check to ensure this wasn't potentially giving the Sagittarians an even further leg up? The Sagittarians' researchers were brimming with excitement. My Prime, the substance mentioned here, we've managed to translate it from the human's crude description and believe, with some certainty, that it to be analogous to the hyperdense alloys. So you are saying that we can achieve this reaction mix? The leader eyed the worn set of notes on the table, written in a strange scribbled human hand. The scientist nodded eagerly, their scales shining with exhilaration. We should be capable of replicating these reactions conditions in just a matter of weeks, sir. Then let us beat the humans at their own game. You seem rather amused by this all, the general most opposed to John stated. Is it all a game to you? John shrugged, leaning back in his chair. As you said, a certain level of spycraft and even war itself is a game. I don't know if it's my favorite game, but I certainly feel like it's one I'm good at. He sat up. So does this conclude everything? Not quite, the first general said, as she keyed a command window to bring up the hologram of a starfield. This is a long-range sensor image of one of the Sagittarian Prime's research hubs, code-named Cannon. A small circle superimposed on the screen temporarily highlighted a particular cluster of small but bright stars. Approximately 2 weeks ago, the observation post recorded this. She had played on the video. The assembled generals and the spy watched as stars within the circle began to dim, fade, and warp, until it resembled a distorted funhouse mirror, a ring of light with a few entirely different and dimmer stars visible within it. What you see here is a gravitational lensing caused by an emergence of a hyperdense object, which we believe to be a black hole, at the approximate location of Cannon. Such emergence would have wiped out the research base, all facilities, and likely most of the nearby systems, which we believe were either uninhabited or further offshoots of their weapons development branches. She looked up at John with a mixture of curiosity, frustration, and admiration. What on earth did you do, Mr. Doe? John smiled slightly. When Dr. DeNovo described successful quantum teleportation to me, they said you could think of it as skipping a rock across a pond, except, in this case, it's a ship bouncing along the surface of space-time. He pointed to the image on the screen. That's what happens when you just throw a really heavy rock. You get a nice splash, but not much else of use. There was a murmur among the generals, leaning over to whisper to each other, before finally the first general sat forward and cleared her throat. Mr. Doe, we are still in discussion as to whether this project, Operation Nail Spike as you called it, she shuffled her notes, needs further discussion, disciplinary action or commendation, but for now, you're dismissed. John Doe nodded in satisfaction, rising to his feet. Very well, thank you for having me. Just give me a ring when you need anything else. Standing, he smiled and sauntered out of the room. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.